to say, hell fucking yeah, you did it. As a huge Toxic Avenger fan, this felt like everything I wanted and then some. So
Oh
thank you.
man, thank you. I am delighted. If you want to go ahead and press record, you can. But that was my priority. There was a lot of priorities, but the first one was always that the fans of the original would feel like that this was a respectful continuation of their baby and not like some weird left turn that nobody wanted. So I'm glad to hear that.
No, this is the right turn in all the right directions. And I'll just do my quick intro here. But this is Matt Orozco from Macabre Daily. And I am so excited to be joined by Macon Blair today, who is an actor, screenwriter, director, and the driving force behind the upcoming Toxic Avenger remake, which is coming to theaters on August 29th from Legendary Pictures and Troma Entertainment. And as I was just telling you, Macon, this is everything I wanted in a Toxic Avenger film and more. So hats off to you and the rest of the team on what I know is going to be one of the best times in the theater of this year.
Oh my,
Um,
thank you, bud. Thank you. That means a lot to hear. Like I was saying, I was hoping the plan was always to try and make something that the fans could get down with. That was the first priority.
well, I was grinning from ear to ear, and my wife was like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Nothing. I am so good right now." But what I wanted to ask you is, it's clear that you have such a passion for the Toxic Avenger because as a fan, I could notice some really subtle Easter eggs that, call back without ever rubbing the nostalgia in your face. And I'm curious to know what you remember about seeing the original Toxic Avenger for the first time.
I remember it crystal clear. It had come out on VHS, so I was in the sixth grade, and my friend's older brother, who was always like, "You got to check this out. You got to listen to this." He had the tape, and this was back in the day where the cover of the videotape was everything, and it was kind of like, "Look at this," and there's the mutant with the tutu and the American flag and everything, and we were just blown away. It was so it had this like lovely sleazy quality, and I mean that with great
Right.
affection. This kind of like perfectly trashy quality. It was so funny. And it also, and so like the tone of it was inspirational to us, but also it did seem like a bunch of guys that made this movie like in their house or in their neighborhood with their buds, and that was the first time I ever remember feeling like, oh wait, movies can be kind of they don't have to be Raiders of the Lost Ark, they can be kind of small maybe, and that was hugely inspirational as we were starting to make our own movies on VHS. We had gotten a camera, and so that was a real motivating factor. Like we can just get some makeup together ourselves and goop it on our face and make our own thing. And the tone of the movie found its way into the things we were making at that time too. So it it was never something where I was like, one day I'm going to do a Toxic Avenger. It never crossed my mind. But because it was so formative when I was 12, it found its way into a lot of the things I started to write growing up. And so when Legendary was soliciting pitches for the screenwriting job for a remake that they were doing with Troma, it felt like a way of coming full circle. Like, oh, this is sort of like going back to those movies that we made in the backyard with my friends when we were 12.
And it's clear that the reverence for the film is in there. I think everyone comes to Troma, particularly the Toxic Avenger, in different ways. I started at the Toxic Crusaders, which then led me into the Toxic Avenger, and I probably saw it at an age I shouldn't have seen it at, but I think that's what
Most
makes a
people
film
did,
like that.
yes.
Yeah, most people see Troma movies at an ages they're not supposed to. So you mentioned that the part of this, the number one goal was to make sure that fans of the original could kind of come into this and feel like this is in the spirit of the original. What are the other non-negotiables that you had going forward when you thought about remaking the film?
Before I had any kind of a story, there was just sort of like, this is what I think people are going to hope for and expect, and it was one that it's rated R, just for the standpoint of like it can be kind of goopy and gross. That's sort of part of the appeal. That it's a person in a suit. Not that we necessarily would have had the resources to do a CGI Toxie, but it's just that sort of handmade quality is part of the
Yeah.
appeal. And having it feel kind of hand stitched is part of the appeal. And then the other thing was just that the movies are they're so silly and they're so sweet in that way. and I felt like we should really try to steer away from any version that was too gloomy or self-serious or like try to have it make literal sense or have it like try to explain it. You know how sometimes when
Yeah.
like, there are superhero movies and they're like, well, because it's a movie, we have to make their suit be like body armor. So it makes
Yeah. Has to be grounded in reality.
yeah, because they're not going to be wearing tights or they're not going to wear a lycra suit. And it was just sort of like let's sort of avoid that and just be like no it is what it is and the silliness and the lightness is kind of um that's a featured part of it that we should not try to shy away from. And so those are kind of the main things. And then after that, it was kind of like, okay, if that's the structure and that's the vibe, then are we going to do the exact same story where it's like a young kid at a health club and he's kind of being picked on by bull and like is that the sort of thing? And that's when it sort of felt like a fork in the road where like if we do the exact same story again, then it my fear was that that would really start to feel like, why are we doing this at all? They've already done that so perfectly with Mark Torgl as Melvin in the first one, and it's like you can't improve on that. And so that's where the idea sort of started to take shape that it should be it's still the Toxic Avenger, but it's a different guy altogether. You know, there's different iterations of who is in the Captain America costume. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's that kind of thing. So it's a different guy. He's older. His problems are more the problems of an older person. His sort of the things he's got to figure out are more oriented around that. But it's still a Toxic Avenger story in that kind of more or less universe.
I
So
mean, it is, and I think you do what great remakes do is that they honor the original in intention, but they carve an entirely new pathway for them that makes sense within the world that's created. And again, I think the homages that you do remind fans that this is in fact a Troma film, but especially with the tone. But at the same time, you're right. Winston Gooze isn't, Melvin, and he's a very different character, and he has, some very different problems he's facing, but they
yeah,
work in the film. And you know, I have a last question for you because I think we'll run out of time, but I could talk to you all day, if I'm being honest, is do you have your top three trauma films of all time, ones that have made the biggest imprint on you, and informed your career?
the one that well the original Toxie was the first one I saw out of nowhere and that was the one that was kind of like what is this and at that point I didn't even realize what Troma was. It was just Toxic Avenger. And then what was interesting as they came later, and I would say the other two, Nukem High would be a close second,
Yeah.
and Surf Nazis would be a third. But that was when it started to occur to me that there's this like larger universe that I really like. That, like, you know, whether they are literally in the same story universe or not, there's this branding thing of Troma that like if you see that then you know that like the type of movie you're gonna get, like you know, maybe some characters overlap, but like it's you're gonna have that kind of vibe, and so you know what to expect. And so then it's kind of like you go to the video store and you just get a Troma movie, and whatever it may be is okay. But those are the ones that I remember the most because we saw the first one, and as the others started to come out, we would always keep our eyes open. There was a great video store where we lived where, you know, we would ride our bikes down and it had all the more sort of fringy, obscure stuff that Errol's or then Blockbuster didn't have as much of, and that's where we would go.
Yeah, I mean, those are the formative years. And I think Toxie's the gateway into this world of trauma. I mean, I remember buying Bloodsucking Freaks at a Suncoast video at like the age of 15 and like bless the guy who sold it to me. But, there's just so many, yeah, it's just like I'm not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, Macon, I just want to say again, congratulations on the film. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And a reminder to everyone that August 29th, get your ass to the theater and see this with other people because it's such a blast. So thank you, Macon.
Thanks for taking the time. It was great talking to you.
Same.